everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Heart of CX podcast. My name is Max Ball, and today we have another guest. Elaine Lee is with us. I ran into Elaine the way some of us run into people these days, which is through LinkedIn. She had made some comments, and I responded to a couple of posts of hers, and I started talking about the concept of deflect to digital, and she took exception with how kind of impersonal and company centric that was. And I had to kind of go, yeah, you're right. But it's a cool concept, and I kind of defended it back. So that led to an interesting exchange, which led to an interesting conversation, which led me to go, Michael, we got to have you on the podcast. Elaine, I want to have you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll hand over to Joanna. You can introduce yourself and kind of kick off the actual conversation here.
Sounds sure. Good. Thanks, Max. So I'm Elaine Lee. I'm managing director of a consultancy based in London that focuses and specialises in customer experience. And I've been working with customers for a very long time before customer experience was called customer experience. And I started client side, spent the first half of my career working client side, running inbound, outbound, and customer experience for UK-based organisations, and then looked into European-based, and then had a global remit for a company called IMP. My role was working with outsourcers, so I managed all our inbound contact centres, our outbound telesales groups, and often we had a separate unit who looked after customer services, and we had those across the globe in different countries, in different places, in different languages, but all with the common theme of how do we delight and surprise our customers and build proper relationships with them so that they come back and buy again. And actually, it's not just a once and done purchase. Then for the last 15 years, I've been working in the consultancy, co-founded, and I'm the Lee in Reynolds Busby Lee. And my two business partners have now gone back client side, couldn't resist the lure of a good client. And for the last 5 years, I've been MD and running the consultancy. We work with a range of clients in all sorts of sectors because what we do is sector agnostic. It doesn't matter which sector you're in, but if you work well with your customers and your contacts, they will continue to build relationships with you. So we work with direct-to-consumer brands, we work with sports companies, we work with charities, and it's about understanding how your customers feel about the relationship they're having with you. And our role is often to bring their voices into the boardroom and help them represent themselves and get their views across at senior level. And often those are conversations that contact centre staff are having. I've worked in many a contact centre. I've managed a fair few in my time. And I know that the teams there are hugely passionate about the customers too. So often we're working in tandem and I'm amplifying their voices. And I guess that's me, really.
And from that, Joanna, I think you can see why I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to have her on the Heart of CX.
I am so excited. I'm so excited to have you, Elaine, and can't wait to start this conversation. It's such an exciting time right now in customer experience in the contact center world, and thinking about the life cycle and the journey of contact centers from when you started in the contact center those many years ago, and I've been there as well many more years than I'd like to admit. What are you seeing in terms of the transformation from 20, 30 years ago to today?
So when I started, we had a lot of black and green screen technology. It was dreadful to read. It was really awkward. It took 6 weeks to train anybody to be anything useful. And I can remember sitting through when I worked for a mail order wine company and going through the training program. And the trainer said to me, when you get to this screen, you hit the button 6 times. And then you move to the next screen. Why do I do that? I don't know. She said, what goes on all those other screens? I don't know, she said, but we just hit the button 6 times. Mine's not the reason to ask. But now, and actually that was nearly 25 years ago, and my role with them was to actually help them design a system that the agents and advisors could actually work with that improved massively the customer experience. And I think that's what I've really seen in transformation, is that understanding that customers want to interact with us, and it's not just a monologue, it's a dialogue.
Mm.
and that customers don't follow a set script. I know over the years we've all tried putting scripts in so that we can make customers, our agents follow the process. But it becomes very boring, and customers don't have a copy of the script, so they go off script all the time. And it makes life really difficult. And that was one of the things that I remember from my wine experience was we kind of talk to the customer and we get them all excited about an additional case of wine, and they go off and think about it. We get to the end and they say, oh, go on then, I'll have that. And we would have to stop the order, throw it in the bin, and start all over again. Now, okay, if you don't, and that was just the most tedious thing for the staff and the customer. And all you could hear was, I'm so sorry, I'm going as fast as I can.
Oh.
And actually, the customers were great about it, but it wasn't that wasn't a mass audience in those days. We took the business from 26 million pounds, British pounds turnover to 100 million in 3 years by focusing on the customer.
Mm.
And
Wow.
making it a surprise and delight and a joy. And most of those customers thought we were a tiny, weeny little business that had a little wine cellar and somebody was literally running around in the background picking up the bottles, because that was the environment and the atmosphere we created. They felt they were touching something special and didn't know
That
how they forgot we kept that lovely feel.
that is awesome. That's awesome. And thinking to your initial comment there in terms of those black and green screens and
Mhm.
needing to know the special buttons and the codes and the function buttons that you need to touch, it still amazes me to this day how many companies still run on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so and it does have that very scripted feel when you've got that older technology. And so what have you seen in your business in terms of how does technology and customer experience come together?
So it's a real mixed bag, Joanna. We've had some brilliant experiences where the ops and the IT teams have worked really closely with the contact centres, and they've really got to the bottom of what's the issue we're trying to solve from both the business perspective, but also the customer expectation. And so we've had some seamless transformations, and I'm seeing new technology where you no longer have to have an IVR that directs customers. So push 1 for that, 2 for that, 3 for that, and none of the options ever fit what you want as a customer. Um, but I'm seeing new technology coming in where actually the system is able to overlay across all your system architecture and pick up your identity as a customer, all your history, all your previous contacts, if you've been on the website, if you're on the website now, and predict what you are wanting to talk to them about and route you straight to the most appropriate agent.
Mhm.
In other places, I've seen disastrous things happening where ops and IT are trying to save money. They know they need a new bit of kit because something's no longer supported technically, and they'll buy the wrong piece of kit because it's the cheapest piece of kit. And I spent many a year working with the contact center clients, and we needed a new wallboard and a new call routing system. And the solution bought by the IT department, at the behest of the board, actually wasn't the IT department's fault, but the board went for the cheaper option. And it was a
Right.
solution that was employed in taxi companies. It's a really different business,
Mm.
and when we first plugged it in, we could only have 5 customers. Actually, I'm laughing, but I shouldn't laugh. We could only have 5 customers in the queue at any one time. We had hundreds of customers
Wow.
calling. It's like they just got an engaged tone. It's like, I don't think this is quite right. Can we unplug it? And it took us years to get it right. And even then, it was a solution where the phone would ring after the call had been answered. And it was just like, this is bonkers.
Oh my
So
God. So,
but because it was cheap, it was deemed to be the right solution. And the
so
contact centre team worked so hard to try and get round it and
do the best with
find,
what they had.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
spreadsheets. And, I've been working with a major healthcare company. And when I first went into them, they had all their data in a spreadsheet, and they were, it was, I don't know, I think we had 10 agents who were all doing outbound calls, and they color coded it depending on which agent had made the call. One started at the
Mhm.
bottom, one started at the top, and the rest just guessed where they were. It's like, no, let's have some structure.
I am
Let's use the
laughing
routing
because
software.
Oh.
I've been there. I
Yeah.
know exactly what you're talking about, Elaine, because I've been there. I think agents are the masters at workarounds when technology fails them. They
Right.
are that middleware and that integration to ensure that they don't negatively impact customer experience just as much
I,
as
Glenn,
they possibly can.
I'm really curious. Do you think more people are looking at a bigger picture, or do you think there's still the same amount of people who are just, what's the cheapest kit I can get? Let's go. Have you seen a change in that?
There's been a slow change, but I think the last 12 months and COVID is going to accelerate some of that, because actually we've had to deploy. There was a whole shift to digital, and that's where you and I first started in our deflect digital conversation.
Right.
Getting it right in digital is not a bad thing, Max, but if you're deflecting a call into digital instead of giving the customer choice, then I have an issue. But I think if our digital solutions have got much better. And so long as we give customers choice and make those options relevant to them, then I think we're there. And I think the last 12 months has focused the mind a little in that technology teams had to get solutions in place to allow their businesses to continue with their staff working from home, and with security and payment handling and all of those things. And I think that here in the UK, there's been a huge backlash about poor quality customer service throughout the pandemic, because people 12, 14 months on are still saying, oh, we're so sorry, you're having a dreadful experience and you'll be on hold for at least 3 hours because we've got no staff, they're all working from home. And the customer's sitting there quite rightly saying, that's not my problem, and you've had a year to fix it.
Right.
Sort it out. And so what we're seeing here is that customers are being very less tolerant of brands and organizations who are not addressing those issues, and they are flocking to brands who delight on the customer experience side. So, brands have had tiny weeny contact centers, or small teams. I don't even call them a contact center. They're our customer service team, they're our product specialists, whatever they might call them. And they've grown enormously because they've had to find people, but they've focused on the quality of the conversation and the product, not on the technology. And they've gone a little bit back to basics. So perhaps unplug their IVR routing system and just let customers go through, because actually that's the fastest way. And they've put things on their website to try and get some of that traffic to enable to self-serve. But it comes from having a look at what's on the site. Is it relevant? What's the most frequently asked question? Can a customer complete a journey online or not? Or is it only a bit of information and then they've got a phone anyway? Well, is it faster to just let them phone and be done with it? Because actually, from the customer's perspective, that's one interaction rather than two. And so some of the newer e-commerce type businesses are getting it right faster. The newer banks, we've got Monzo and Starling, who are kind of new banks who are making real waves. And that's partly because they don't have the legacy systems that some of our older institutions have. And I think that's enabled them to grow faster, but really focus on the customer experience. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, Max. Sorry, it's a long answer to your
No,
question.
I was hoping for a long answer, quite honestly. It's as simple as that question sounded. I think it's what Joanna and I spend so much of our time trying to figure out is, where are people on this maturity model of moving to a more, profit center approach to customer engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And with that, why is it important to move your contact center from that cost center thinking, like you had mentioned, taking that lowest cost contact center solution? Why is it important to move them from that to more of that customer experience profit center mentality? What are you seeing out there?
So I've got a classic example. One of our clients came to us with a problem. Actually, it was an offline inquiry. They built a brand new website. They had sort of older customers, sort of 50, 60 plus customers. And they came to us saying, we've just put this fantastic new website in, but our customers won't use it. Why won't they use it? Help us understand. And that's one of our products, is a customer experience audit, where we recruit your customer and we get them to track exactly what they're going through and audit what they're doing, telling us with a real focus on the emotion, attitude and feeling as they go through that customer journey. And overwhelmingly, the response from the customer panel was, we don't understand what to do. We don't understand how this works. And when we phone, it's a truly awful experience. And this was a food retailer who was selling high-end products, restaurant quality produce to you and I at home, as well as supplying restaurants around the world. And out in Monte Carlo and exciting places where you might go for fine dining. So they had a fantastic product, but the customer experience was truly awful. And it became really clear that the site had been built by, Gen Z, millennials, really, not even Gen Z, but millennials for octogenarians. And there was this total disconnect between what the customer wanted and what the website had been built to do. And if you weren't a digital native, you didn't follow it, and they couldn't understand why these older people just didn't understand what was happening, and they needed more signposting. But as part of that, we uncovered that when they went on the phone, it was very process led. So what's your, hello, we're such and such a company. Give us your customer number or your postcode. Can I have the promotion code off the catalogue? Can I have the product code? Can I have a card number? What date do you want it? There was no naming going on. There was no building relationships. It was all very functional. And we just called it out and said, you know what, I think we could do this better. And so I convinced the MD and the owner to let me do that. And they said, right, you can have 8 agents from the newest in the door to our most experienced best upseller. If you can make them all better, you can stay and you can train everybody. Okay. Well, I like a challenge. I'm a slightly competitive girl. And so I designed them a training program that just took the shopping process apart. And we looked at it as, I'm a direct-to-consumer person, you're a brand, and what do your shoppers do and what's their normal process? So we looked at it from the customer's perspective. And we sort of talked to them about, what are they buying? They're buying food. What's food? Food is something that either it's fuel or it's something that we really enjoy and we get passionate about. So let's talk about the product. So let's not use flash frozen. Let's talk about frozen at the peak of perfection, at the peak of maturation, suspended in time. Let's talk about juicy fillet steaks. Let's talk about make their mouths water. Let's build the experience over the phone. And what we did with those 8 agents is within an 8-week period, we had more than double their sales across for that group of the team. And then we rolled it out to the whole agent group, and we put 18% straight to the bottom line through sales. So it was, it wasn't 1 or 2%. It was 18%, which was a marked difference on their profitability as a business. Yeah. And they kept saying to me, but this is going to take more time. It's going to cost us money. It took us 6 seconds more, and we gave you an extra 18% on the bottom line across the whole business.
Wow.
I love that. I love that. So penny wise, pound foolish in terms of focused on average handle time and not focused on relationship building initially, and only 6 seconds more adds that 18%. Yeah. Did you also measure anything with customer sat there as well?
We did that through our external FIFO program. So we looked at the 4-star rating. We were at a 5-star. They already had a really good rating for products, and it did go up from, I think, a 4.6 to a 4.8 in terms of service. But what we really noticed was that they weren't a continuity or subscription business. They were a kind of one-time purchase company. Is that the repeat buying rate went up. So it wasn't just in what customers were telling us they thought they felt. Their behaviour demonstrated that they were more willing to come back and trust us. And that involved us cross-selling, upselling, talking to customers about what they were going to do with the food that they were buying. So we talked people out of buying fillet steak to make slow-cooked braising casseroles and downsold them products that were much better suited for that. And having saved them £10 on an order, I remember being told off by the MD at the time. But actually, we listened to the whole of that call, and the customer went on to spend more than that £10 that we'd saved them on one product across more products because we'd built trust. And it's absolutely in the numbers. You can see it in the return rate. You can see it in the satisfaction levels on things like Trustpilot and FIFO, and you can see it in your staff, actually, because it's a much more motivating place to work when you're enjoying what you're doing, you're building relationships, and if you're having good quality interaction, you have lower staff turnover, much more engagement. And you know what? We also cut the recruitment bill because with the brand advocacy within the contact centre meant that they were then referring their friends to come and work. So we didn't have HR costs to recruit.
That is
It's such a
an
great
amazing.
story.
It really culminates what we've been talking about here on the podcast for the last several weeks in terms of making this a personalized experience, putting that customer in the center, focused on customer loyalty and that repeat business, and doing right by the customer is ultimately going to result in a higher bottom line. It's not cutting your average handle time, looking at your contact center as that cost center and trying to chisel away costs isn't going to be your differentiator. It's really doing right and the money follows.
Absolutely. And this was not a business that competed on price. We were high end, high quality, top notch, and high priced. So it wasn't that customers were making savings and they'd have put up with a lower quality service.
Right.
But we listened to customers and we ran a number of focus groups with them. And I can remember a lady saying, my friends tell me I don't know how you afford their prices. And she said, I don't know how they afford not to buy from you, because this is, I can make fantastic meals and I have smaller portions because the quality's better. If I buy a steak from you, I don't lose half of it in the pan. I get 120 gram or 180 gram steak and I'm full. And that might serve the two of us because we've got smaller appetites. Whereas they'll buy 180 gram steak and half of it disappears in fat or water because it's been plumped up or whatever. So, that's where my money goes. And it goes in the relationship that we have, because you know what the right products that I'm trying to cook and you help me.
Yeah, which goes back to your flat iron steak story up front. But I'm curious, do either of you have an example of something along those lines with more of a somebody who's not competing as a high-end company?
So I've got an example from the sporting world, which is slightly different, and a conversation I was having with somebody earlier. As sports fans, we're often affiliate our loyalty to one particular club or me too.
I have my local teams.
And but we're taken for granted a little bit in that our loyalty won't waver and we'll put up with anything and everything. But actually, we ran a project for the English and Wales County Cricket Board here in the UK, and they asked us to look at the customer experience of their sports grounds, their top first-class cricket grounds across the country. And they weren't massively high priced, and you could go to a game of cricket for £20 or so. You weren't buying executive boxes, you weren't buying the higher price tickets. It was just entry on the ground or tickets, so they were much lower value. But they were really interested in the experience of the customer across the whole day, from buying the tickets to getting to the event to going in, and what with the catering and bathroom facilities and all of those things. And they learned huge amounts from that, because actually it wasn't, yes, the cricket was part of the experience, but everything around it influenced whether people went back or not. And if you weren't somebody who was a staunch Essex cricket fan, it might have been a nice day out, but perhaps you might not have gone back the next day, and you've only paid £20 for your ticket. So what they found was, by improving the toilets and they're giving more food options. So, if you were a vegetarian, the only option was often chips cooked in animal fat, which meant actually it wasn't really an option. There were no vegan options. They hadn't really kept up with the trends. But by focusing on actually what was important to their visitors, they changed their whole process and thought about where they should be investing, because they were ready to invest, but it was, where do we put our money?
Yeah.
And so for them, they did get that repeat traffic coming back, but at £20 a ticket, not £300.
Interesting. Yeah. Similar here. It's kind of interesting. We have two baseball teams. One, the Giants had a horrible stadium, terrible customer experience. It was out practically in the Bay, the coldest, windiest spot in the entire Bay Area. They got smart marketing. They actually got to the point where in an extra inning night game, you got a little pin saying you survived it. And they ended up building this beautiful stadium downtown, and they flipped it around. We have another team, the Oakland A's, and they're trying to build a stadium. Theirs is, at least it's easy to get to. It's at the confluence of multiple freeways and the what BART, which we have for our little bit of public transit goes there. So they have that part nailed, but the facility and the experience is really lacking. And, because of that right now, they're stuck being the discount team.
Yeah.
And the Giants get to charge the premium. And, they're proposing a new stadium, and at some point that will all happen. So it's something I've seen in my life over here too. That's a good story.
I think it'll be an interesting one for us in Europe and football or soccer, as you guys know it, because of the European Super League issue we've had in the last couple of weeks, where our bigger clubs wanted to form a new European Super League, which took out a huge element of competition. And the fans have been up in arms, and we had protests and we've had all sorts of things. And at one of the football grounds only last weekend, the fans stormed the pitch, they stormed the stadium, and they prevented the match from taking place. And it was real fan power. We are unhappy about the Super League, but do you know what? We're really unhappy about our owners and the fact that they are only interested in the money. This league would have meant that our income was protected, but actually, as fans, we want that. The excitement of the potential of being relegated or not doing so well, and that's where our passion's born from, is that element of competition. You take that away and it's just not the same, and don't steal our game. So it'll be really interesting to see how they come back. I mean, those grounds are phenomenal, and the owners have invested masses in facilities and stadia and transportation and all sorts of things. But even then, the fans came back and said, "We're not happy, and you will listen to us." And that meant preventing a game that was due to be on on televised on their networks. They had to stop it and postpone it.
Talk about a perfect coda to this conversation. Such a powerful statement. I think this is a good time to wrap up. Elaine, do you have any last thoughts you want to share? Or
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I know football's an extreme example of that, but actually it could happen in any environment. But it might not be that they storm your building and they ruin your business, that they come and stop you doing what you do, but they might just take their feet and their shopping power elsewhere. And if your competitors are doing it better, faster, giving them a better experience, even if it costs them more money, they'll do it. And I was working with a company who were faffing about with their systems and saying, "Oh, well, we can't, well, I don't know what to do." And a customer was online doing one of our mystery shopping exercises, and she said, "Do you know what? I could have been to Amazon, I could have bought it, had it delivered, and used it before I've even worked out how to get through this audit, this experience. That's what I'm going to do." And she took her money and went elsewhere. And it's so easy in the world of e-commerce to do that now. And as high streets and bricks and mortar, we've got to fight our way back into getting customers back through the doors, because the last 12 months has pushed people into going online, and therefore it's really important that we wow our customers and really nurture those relationships, otherwise they will walk. She says, "What a dreadful way to finish." But actually it's really important,
no,
because
fish on urgency. What's better than that?
Yeah, and I think we can flip that a little and say this is the time to innovate. This
yeah,
is definitely an opportunity
yes,
that has been given to us. And so as we take a look at customer experience and what we can do today, really looking at that omni-channel experience, whether it's brick and mortar, whether it's online, it's creating that experience and
yeah,
putting that customer in the middle,
yeah.
in the center of everything we do. I think this is a great opportunity for us to really become innovative and really redefine customer experience and elevate it even more.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with you, Joanna. And I think what's really important is actually hearing the customer voice in those conversations. Let's not revert to what we think is best, but let's listen to our customers and then act quickly. Let's not dilly and dally, and let's take our time with it. We've got to move, and we've got to hear them.
Yes,
But you're right;
absolutely.
it's a huge opportunity.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep. On that note, thank you so much, Elaine. This has been a pleasure. The time has flown, as it seems to always do when we've got a guest on, or anytime we're talking. So thank you again for sharing your insights.
You're very welcome. It's been great to talk to you both.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
Take care.